We are being recorded. Excellent. Okay, this is Neil Gaynor, president of MUD 6, and I call the meeting of the Board of Directors of Montgomery County Municipal Utility District Number 6 at the regular public meeting, June 16th, 2021 at 1:30 p.m. Let's see, I don't see I see Brian Yates has joined us. Thank you, Brian. Brian, we have a quorum. We're only missing Bruce Cunningham, who is at a doctor's. He was running a little late at that place. But since we have a quorum, could you take us through the procedures, please?
Happy to, Neil. This is Brian Yates with Schwartz, Page & Harding. And as Neil said, this is Montgomery County MUD number 6 Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, June the 16th, 2021. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through our remote meeting procedures and then perform a roll call. So to begin with, I need to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely today so that we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by consultants. When you hear your name and your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with the roll call for our board of directors, Neil Gaynor.
Present.
Brooke Hamilton.
Present.
Deborah Sargent.
Present.
Ron Cucci.
Present.
And Bruce Cunningham is absent. We do have a quorum of our board present, so we will move on to the roll call for Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney.
Present.
Maureen Bourgeois. Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
And Jeannie Scott is out at a CLE today. Do we have any other members of Woodlands Water in the meeting? Okay, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelly.
Present.
Ed Shackelford.
Present.
Chris Meeks.
Present.
Matt Corley.
Present.
Anyone else from the River Authority in the meeting?
No, sir.
Okay, we will move on then to MUD 6 consultants. Do we have any MUD 6 consultants in the meeting today? If not, we will move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well.
Aaron Hofstetter, resident MUD 6.
Okay, any other members of the public?
Bob Lilac from MUD 1.
This is Brian. Anyone else? Okay, Maureen, does that cover everyone who appears to be logged into the meeting?
Everybody's accounted for.
Okay, that'll complete the roll call. Neil, I'll hand it back over to you to begin the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. This is Neil Gaynor speaking. Okay, moving on to agenda item 2, receive comments from the public. Are there any comments?
Neil, this is Aaron Hofstetter, if I may.
Okay, go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm a resident of MUD 6. I have had an opportunity to observe a number of the recent MUD 6 meetings. Just wanted to take a moment to express my support for the potential consolidation of MUD 1 and MUD 6. It does appear that there are some fairly obvious financial benefits that would come from the potential consolidation of those two districts. And if consolidation presents an opportunity to reduce overhead, as well as potentially improve operational efficiencies, then I believe it needs to be strongly considered. I certainly understand there's more information that's being collected that will need to be considered, but I would ask the board of elected directors to at least present that information to the voters and allow the electors to ultimately make the decision on consolidation. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Are there any other comments from the public, please? Okay, hearing none. Sorry, I was muted there. Moving on to agenda item 3, receive president and directors' comments. First, let's start with our directors. Okay, from me, I just want to indicate to the board, I'm pleased to report that the Storm Inlet Marker Project, which began here with MUD 6, is now being extended to other MUDs in the woodlands. And this effort is an example of how partnerships can work effectively. In this case, it would be the MUDs, Woodlands Water Agency, the Township Environmental Services, and volunteer organizations. And this is a great example to help us improve water quality by reminding the public only have stormwater go down storm drains. So that's all the comments I have. Now, moving on to agenda item 4, consider and act on requests for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges imposed by the district. I guess that'd be over to you, Mike.
This is Mike Mooney. Nothing for MUD 6 this month.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mike. Moving on now to the consent agenda. And I'll read all these as normal. Item 5, review and act on the minutes of the May 2021 Board of Directors meeting. Item 6, review and act on the financial reports and disbursements of May 2021. Item 7, receive the tax collector's report. Item 8, consider and act on approving attendance and expenses for district and/or Woodlands Water Trustee business. And item 9, authorize completion, execution, and filing with the Secretary of State of voting system annual filing form relative to district elections. Now, does any director wish to move any item from the consent agenda into the regular agenda?
This is Brooke Hamilton. I'd like to make a comment on the minutes. Time to do so?
Yeah. If there were no, if directors did not want to move a agenda item onto the consent agenda in the regular meeting, we would then go into comments and corrections on the minutes. So please go ahead, Brooke.
All right, this is on number 13. Statement was made that Director Hamilton does not believe the cost savings will be beneficial. I'd like to change that to say, I don't believe the cost savings would be material. That's my only comment.
And
Neil, this is Ron Kutchy. I have a comment too on the minutes of the meeting.
Okay.
It was item number 17. Discuss any matters of placement on future agenda. Consider an act on MUD 1 and MUD 6 consolidation. And looking at the agenda item number 14 for today's meeting, it looks like it's no longer an action item. And I brought this out, in writing earlier out there, and I think you've discussed this with Jim, and I just want to make sure that the minutes are properly recorded, which I thought they were, but then the agenda needs to be reviewed again.
Yeah, hang on a second, let me unmute, okay. Yeah, we did have a discussion about that, Ron, you and I in particular, and I indicated to you that not all the information was available. So we are moving to voting on this matter at next month's meeting. Now, with regard to discuss any matters for placement on future agenda, what I want to do is in the future, we specify which meeting that these agenda items would be placed on for clarification so that we don't create any confusion. And we can talk about that when we get to agenda item 17.
Neil, this is Ron Kutchy. That's actually a good point. I think in the past with MUD 6 meetings or even trustee meetings, future agenda has implied the next month's meeting, but maybe it should be so stated.
Okay, Neil Gaynor again. Thank you, Ron. I think that would be excellent clarification, and we will discuss that when we get to agenda item 17 today. So with those, with the correction that Brooke made to the minutes, are there any other questions or concerns about what is in the consent agenda? Okay. I move that we approve the consent agenda with the corrections as discussed to the minutes. Is there a second?
This is Ron Kutchy. I'll second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Okay, let us now go to the vote. Brian, please.
This is Brian. If there's no further discussion on the consent items, we will call the vote. Neil, how do you vote?
Aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Hey, Brian, I'm on board now. Bruce, can you hear me?
Okay, Bruce, this is Brian. Yes, sir, I do. How do you vote on the motion?
I vote aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, this is Neil Gaynor again. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Bruce, for making it to the meeting. Okay, we're moving on to the regular agenda. We go to agenda item 10, receive the San Jacinto River Authority Woodlands Division report. Is that you, Matt, or?
Yes, sir. This is Matt. Excuse me. This is Matt Corley with San Jacinto River Authority. Page 13 of your packet should be the Woodlands Monthly Operations Report. And I'll highlight the fiscal year to date average blend ratio between groundwater and surface water is 49% groundwater to 51% surface water. We did not have any permanent violations excuse me, for the month of May. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding the report you may have.
Are there any questions for Matt from the directors? Matt, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So going to section 2, wastewater data. Seems that every time it rains, we get a rather impressive 2-hour peak flow number. So meaning the I&I seems to be adding volume to the sewage system. Does this cause any change in operating costs as far as you're aware, or this extra rainfall or whatever is coming into the system? If you know.
Anytime we're treating runoff rainwater, we're treating water, treating stormwater. It's unnecessarily being treated. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, this is Chris Meeks. Matt's right. So you're basically just treating stormwater. So based on the value, you do have additional electrical costs as well as chemical costs.
At some point and in the future, it would be helpful to get some estimates of those numbers, because I know that we have the retail sewer system under study at this time, and I just would like to see if what the savings would be on the wholesale side for remediation of the I&I in the retail system.
So Neil, just to clarify, would you like us to go back, maybe look at a year time frame, previous year?
I'm trying not to make a project out of this. I just want to get a sense of, what the impact would be. Every time it rains, we get a boatload of water, extra water going down the system, and you've got more pumping and more chemicals and so forth. Just a ballpark number.
Yes, sir. I'll get with Chris and we'll get you some information.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is Chris. Just keep in mind, there also are some intangibles that don't always come with dollar figures tied to them immediately, which is wear and tear on the pumps, motors, equipment and stuff that run a little bit more, not to mention violations from TCEQ. So we can look back and see what we can find as far as average cost. But there are some intangibles that don't always come with a dollar figure.
Okay. That's very reasonable. Just want to understand that a little bit better. Okay. Are there any other questions for SJRA on this agenda item?
And if not, I know that Ron Kelling had a few comments that he'd like to make regarding GMA 14.
Just briefly, we appreciate everybody's involvement in providing comments to Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District, both written and verbal at their public hearing. There was 12.5 folks from the Woodlands. The only people in the audience were from the Woodlands. So that was a good showing. Just a reminder, the public comments are still accepted until July 19th by Lone Star. And the GMA 14 will be voting on the DFC. It's scheduled for October the 6th, but it's probably going to be moved from that date. As soon as we find out what that moved date is, we will let y'all know. Again, thanks for your participation.
Okay, thank you, Ron. If there's
Neil?
nothing else on this agenda item, we'll move on to agenda item 11.
Neil, this is Ron Cucci. I do have one more question of the San Jacinto River Authority.
Okay, Ron.
And it has to do with the odor mitigation project at wastewater treatment plant number 1. I'm wondering if the superall chemical additive has been initiated. I think I saw signs of that at lift station number 1 out here on the entrance to Wilding Estates, but I just wondering if Chris or Matt could give us an update.
Yeah, this is Chris Meeks. I can give you a quick update. About 2 weeks ago, Superall was deployed at lift station 12, which is at the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion. We've been taking what we call before and during samples of the air quality inside the manhole to see what the reduction is in H2S or hydrogen sulfide. And so the week 1 didn't show too much impact on the east side of Grogan's Mill. Week 2 did show some benefit on the east side of Grogan's Mill. However, what we've seen is that there's no impact of Superall on the west side of Grogan's Mill, which is Grogan's Mill and North and South Millbend areas. So what we're looking at doing possibly next week after we do some more investigations and discussion is actually trying to find another location to move that Superall to see if we can get some benefits on the west side of Grogan's Mill.
Thank you. And would the lift station and the entrance to Wilding Estates be one of those potential injection points?
Yes, sir. This is Chris Meeks again. That is definitely one of the sites because it's secure and it has power. Those are two items that we'll definitely need is for the items to be secure and to have power. And so just putting it on top of a manhole is not always convenient because you don't have those two items. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. This is Neil Gaynor again. And just to follow up with a question on that, we did get a report last night from Don Lehman about odors in Lakeside Cove. What was different about this? That there were no odors in Secluded Trail, which is closest to the wastewater treatment facility. Was there any follow-up? I mean, what was this? It wasn't clear what the source of these odors were from the report.
Yeah, this is Chris Meeks again. As it worked out last night, the MUD 47 meeting ended at roughly 7:45. Mr. Lehman's email came in give or take 7:55. So I was actually driving wastewater plant 1 at that time before I left. And I did observe an odor around the aeration basins that we've observed from time to time. It was also very windy, if you recall at the time. That's where that storm was blowing through. So roughly around 8:02, I think it was, I actually drove Lakeside Cove through Secluded Trail by Lake Harrison for about 10 minutes or so, stopping every now and then inside, outside by where the Randalls used to be by the apartment complex. I did not actually see anybody to talk to, and I did not smell anything. Partially, I believe maybe because the storm was coming through and there was so much wind whipping in various directions. But there was a slight odor at the aeration basins, but I did not observe anything outside the fence nor in Lakeside Cove.
Okay, thank you, Chris. This is Neil Gaynor again. I really appreciate you following up and actually being on the ground. We need to get that kind of information back to the residents just so that they realize that the odor reports are being taken seriously, and there will be follow-up. So thank you very much for that. Okay, if there's nothing more on agenda item 11, let us move forward to agenda item 12. Receive the attorney's report. Over to you, Brian.
This is Brian. Thank you, Neil. So I've been reporting to boards generally under the attorney's report about the status of the remote meetings. The governor did renew the disaster proclamation that suspends the in-person meeting requirements under the Texas Open Meetings Act last Monday for another 30-day period. Don't know how many more of those 30-day extensions we're going to see with the cases being so low statewide. I've got to think that that's going to be winding down sooner rather than later. We are in communication with the governor's office and have been assured that we would receive advance notice on when they would be rescinding that proclamation so that we can have an orderly transition for our district clients from remote to in-person meetings. But we have not yet received any indication of when that date will be. That being said, for our district clients that meet at our offices, we are preparing to be able to host in-person meetings beginning after Labor Day in September. That's assuming that the governor hasn't already lifted the proclamation by then. In the Woodlands, we are looking at a bit of a more accelerated time frame for moving back to in-person meetings. The trustees voted last week to hold their first in-person meeting post-COVID next month. The trustees also voted to recommend that the MUD board consider at their July meetings whether they would like to begin holding in-person meetings starting in August. That would allow for a little bit more of a transition from remote to in-person, have the trustees meet first and still have the MUDs meet remote in July to work out the kinks, and then be set up for August to have all the MUDs that would like to meet in person to start meeting in person. At the end of the day, it's still a board decision how you'd like to meet. I believe Jim has been conducting a straw poll of sorts to gauge director interest in meeting in person, and that response has been by and large favorable. But we would have items on the July agendas for districts to actually vote on whether they would like to move back to in-person meetings. So we are excited about that possibility. I think everybody's lives are slowly, if not fully, returning to normal with what we've seen in the significant and extended drop in cases. And we are looking forward to having our board meetings get back to normal as well in the coming months. So that's where we stand on the remote to in-person transition. Happy to answer any questions if y'all have them.
Brian, this is Bruce.
Questions for
Would
Brian?
we be able to have both in-person and video meetings at the same time?
This is Brian. I have received that question a handful of times, and we are looking into it. The explanation's a little bit long, but the short answer is if a district is meeting in person with a quorum, you could not rely on the governor's proclamation to have a director participate by phone or video. But there is the separate provision that is in the Texas Open Meetings Act 551.127 that's been there for a few sessions now that does allow for video conferencing by directors if there's a quorum present in person at a designated meeting location. We looked into that bill shortly after it was passed, along with staff in the Woodlands, and at the time determined that the costs and equipment that would be necessary to comply with the statute was too expensive and would be too difficult to be able to implement. Now, fast forward to where we are today, and everybody from 10-year-olds to 80-year-olds have taken a crash course in Zoom and being able to meet remotely. And the technology has advanced a lot since that bill first came out. It may be possible to comply with that separate provision that is in place regardless of the governor's proclamation to be able to meet, have one or two directors participate by video conference if there's a quorum present in person at the meeting location. So we're going to look into that some more and see if that's something that could be offered in the future. One important thing to note from that is that separate statute is for video conferencing only. So what we're in right now under the governor's proclamation, technically under 551.125 is telephone conference options that some districts have voluntarily chosen to go above and beyond that teleconference option to also offer video conferencing. That's why we have both the conference call line always available and the video conference option available, is to be able to comply with that statute. That's different from the separate video conferencing statute under 127 under the Open Meetings Act. That is only for video conference. So someone could not participate by calling in just audio. It would have to be audio and visual. So that's something that will have to be made clear to boards if they want to consider implementing that. But that is something that we are looking into.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me? Okay, that'll conclude my report. Thank you.
This is Neil Gaynor. Thank you, Brian, for your report. Moving on to agenda item 13, receive and act upon staff information regarding the upcoming MCAD Board of Directors election for the term of office January 1, 2022 through December 2024. So would this be opening up to Jim or who to discuss?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'll take it. This month, you have the opportunity to put forth a name of someone you would like on the ballot for the MCAD Special Purpose District election. Arthur Bredehoff, as we have mentioned a month or so ago, has asked if he could be the representative for the Woodlands Muds, and his name has been put forth by the Muds meetings prior to you. So we would recommend that you adopt the resolution in your packet nominating Arthur Bredehoff, unless you have someone else you'd like to put in that name space.
This is Neil Gaynor again. Open that to the board. Hello.
I went from video to.
Oh, okay. That was the feedback. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any suggestions as regards a candidate other than Arthur? Well, if not, I propose that this board submit Arthur Bredehoff's name as candidate for the election representing Mud 6 on the MCAD Board of Directors.
This is Rob Cucci. I will second that nomination.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none. It's over to you, Brian, to take the vote.
This is Brian. If there's no further discussion on the item, we will go ahead and call the vote. Neil, how do you vote?
Aye.
Brooke? Brooke, how do you vote?
I vote aye again.
Okay, I hear you now. Deborah, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Bruce?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, Neil Gaynor again. Thank you, Brian. So moving on to agenda item 14, review information regarding MUD 1 and MUD 6 consolidation study. And I have a statement I've prepared here that I would like to read out at this time to thoroughly go through this particular agenda item, if you would bear with me. It is indeed a rare event that two municipal utility districts would consider consolidation. The only precedent in our region that I'm aware of is that of MUD 2 and MUD 40 in 2015, 2016. Now, we are considering consolidation of MUD 1 and MUD 6. Speaking for myself, I must convey my concern that completion of the consolidation study document has taken so long. It was my intention from the outset that all relevant matters pertaining to consolidation would be thoroughly reviewed. I believe that such a thorough review is now essentially complete. In my opinion, this study compares favorably in scope to that which was conducted for the MUD 2 and 40 consolidation. However, the study document needs to be finalized, including certain required edits, additions, and appendices. Each of us on this board of directors may reach different conclusions regarding consolidation for many reasons. My intent has been for transparency and to ensure all directors have access to all information. Indeed, there may have been documents at various stages of completion that have been provided for your review. Some relevant information on consolidation is very recent, which you should have received prior to this meeting. Well, I did ask that this information be sent to you anyway. Hopefully you received it. In moving this matter forward, I must place paramount importance on the participation of voters in having a voice in their collective futures. My position is informed by a statement at a recent meeting to discuss progress in odor control in the vicinity of wastewater treatment facility number 1, a meeting which Director Kutchi, General Manager Stinson, and I attended. During that meeting, Township Director Sakula Gibbs repeated the interest of an incorporated city to assume control of the MUDs in the township. Now, you may recall the article in the Woodlands Villager on October 7, 2020 by Jeff Forward with the lead, Bunch, Riser, open to revisiting MUD takeover if Woodlands incorporated. A number of people, including myself, were asked to comment. I am quoted as saying, "The only information I continue to rely upon is the HR Green final report from 2018. This work represents a comprehensive analysis of water, wastewater, and drainage systems in the Woodlands, funded by the township, and is one of several areas of study pertaining to incorporation. It is my expectation that absorption of MUD 6 into a future city of the Woodlands would only occur if demonstrated to be solely in the best interest of the residents in this district. And I stand by those comments today. Our attorney, Brian Yates, has advised that under section 43.75A2 of the local government code, a newly incorporated municipality would have the discretion to adopt an ordinance by 2/3 vote to make section 43.075 applicable to the city and thereby dissolve the MUDs. This decision would not be subject to a separate voter approval. Here is the challenge. As a board, do we give voters a say in their future or not? I say yes, as we are elected to provide that very opportunity should it arise. Such an opportunity has arisen with the potential incorporation of MUD 1 and MUD 6. My thoughts have evolved significantly since the last meeting of the MUD board in May. At that time, I felt great dissatisfaction with the consolidation study and related processes. However, there has been progress since, and I've become far better informed on the processes by which consolidation should proceed. Before we go further with this discussion on this agenda item, I want to hear from all board members on their position with regard to consolidation, and just as important, their position on allowing voters a say in their future. During the May meeting, not all directors were present. And so on these issues, we need to hear viewpoints from all directors. I wish to have the directors speak in alphabetical order as follows: Director Cunningham, Director Hamilton, Director Cucci, and Director Sargent. So if I could turn it over to Bruce to speak first, please go ahead.
Thank you, Neil. I'd be happy to speak. As all of you know, I have been in favor of consolidation for many years and think that all MUDs that have a similar tax rate should be consolidated. We are one system. There is no need for having all the MUDs that we have. I would vote in favor of consolidation, and I think the voters should have the opportunity to vote on consolidation.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Director Hamilton.
I would concur with Bruce that the voters should have the opportunity to approve or disapprove a consolidation.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Over to Director Cucci. Ron?
Thank you, Neil. I haven't seen any feedback from the two MUD 6 members that were on the MUD 1, MUD 6 merger consolidation committee. I've now heard your recommendation, Neil, for consolidation. And I understand Brooke's comment for having the residents vote on the issue. There's one outstanding issue that hasn't surfaced for me yet, and that was if either MUD needed to adjust their maintenance tax rate up or down to be consistent with a consolidation. Has there been a recommendation in that regard?
This recommendation would be stated in a agreement on consolidation. But I would anticipate that a future consolidated MUD would have the same, obviously a consistent tax rate. And I would think that it would be the lower of the two. But again, that's for discussion, and that will be worked out hopefully in the next few weeks.
If I may make a comment, Ron, I think with our tax rate at 8 cents, and I believe MUD 1 is at 7.5 cents, I don't think there's a real issue there. We would simply go back to 7.5, I would think.
Bruce, this is Ron Cucci. My only comment there was just in the last 2 years that you were a strong advocate of increasing our rate from 7.5 to 8 cents. And I think I either abstained or voted against that, as I recall, because I thought our reserves were already adequate. It now seems inconsistent for us to make a consolidation work, for us to consider rolling our rate back to 7.5 cents.
Ron, the reason for doing that is our structure is approaching the end of its presumed lifespan. Our sewer and water systems have been in place 40 to 47 years. And the anticipated lifespan is about 50 years, which was the reason I recommended and the board approved increasing the tax rate to 8 cents. Moving it back to 7.5 cents is a very minor issue as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Bruce, I understand that, but then actually raising it from 7.5 to 8 cents was also a very minor issue a couple of years ago. And I've been a resident of Mud 6 for 43 years myself. I understand the infrastructure aging. Thank you.
This is Brooke Hamilton. I'd like to chime in on this 7.5 versus 8 cents. To our system, I think it would be a mistake to reduce the tax rate. More money than and we're going to need even more than the 8 cents are going to. So I would not want to reduce our rate for that reason.
I'd like to add to Brooke's comment then too, if we've got two older muds considering merging right now, and perhaps one mud increasing their maintenance rate to 8 cents ought to be a consideration of the committee that's looking at consolidation before recommendations are made.
Okay, your point is noted, both Ron and Brooke, and we can include that in the discussion going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now it's Deborah to speak, if you would, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Neil. I'm sure all of you know that I've always been in favor of a consolidation. I believe that we should control our destiny. It's just a matter of time before we become a city and they consolidate all the muds. I think we should do it now. I think that there's some inherent or intangible savings that we're not even going to be able to see until that consolidation actually happens. I know it's going to save on the staff time. I know it will save on paper. It'll save on dollars spent for directors' fees. And I do believe that it should be sent to the voters for them to vote on. And I'm totally in favor of a consolidation. And I think that leaving the rate up to that transition committee is the best answer. I've seen what happens when the township takes over control of a committee or an organization from the DSC standpoint, and they're not resident friendly. They are more based on and focused on commercial. So I'm not sure that I would, I don't want to leave that wholly up to them. I'd like for us to play a part in that. And I think the MUDs playing a part in that is if we have the MUDs have a bigger control of the pot, then they have a little bit more say about it. So I'm in favor of a consolidation, and I definitely believe we should put it to the voters.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This is Neil Gaynor again. I really appreciate the discussion and your viewpoints on this matter. And it seems to me that the direction of the board, that the majority of the board wish to take is clarified, certainly in the direction of allowing voters in the MUD to have a say. And there are some issues potentially on the terms of consolidation. So at the July 2021 meeting of the MUD 6 board, the directors will be voting on moving forward with the consolidation process. And I'm going to try to share my screen if I can, just to walk people through the steps. And appreciate Brian. Let's see, share. And hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yes.
If those of you have a screen, I asked, and I believe Shelley has forwarded this graphic to you. So appreciation for Brian with information on this, confirming the approach, and any errors on this are mine alone, and I take responsibility for them. So the consolidation is governed by the Texas Water Code, Chapter 54, and sections under there, 54, 728, to 54,733. So the wonderful thing about this law is that we are allowed to consolidate. And that's where we are today with the draft study and having this conversation. Moving forward into the actions that need to be done. And that's those actions are described under section 54,729, elections on consolidation. And there are three pieces to this. The first is an agreement on terms and conditions, including bonds, which really applies to neither MUD because we have no outstanding bond debt. Other obligations, of course, SJRA and so forth, or authorized or unissued bonds, which we do have. The tax levy, as we had just discussed, and the adoption of a name for a consolidated MUD. And this will be under discussion and action at both MUD meetings, MUD 1 and MUD 6 in July. So the agreement, to vote the agreement and to vote the elections. And what is up for election, well, that would be the proposition. That would be in November to put to the voters. And the ballot text will need to be submitted, I believe it's August 16th. And the key is that the electors in each district must vote in favor of consolidation. If one district chooses not to consolidate, then the whole thing is null and void. Now, if both electors in both districts vote in favor, we move to the next steps. And that is described under section 54,730 to 54,733. And that would only occur if there was a joint approval of the propositions by the electors. So I just wanted to share that with you so that we understood the path forward. And hopefully I can, there we go, get back to my Zoom screen. So are there any further questions or discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, let us move forward with the agenda. Agenda item 15, receive the general manager's report. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, sir. A few items to summarize from our trustee meeting. I did report that we are still having constructive discussions with TACUS regarding their construction techniques and notification protocols. We've also, at the direction of our outside legal counsel, resubmitted invoices that we had previously submitted to TACUS for reimbursement covering our damage cost, water line and sewer line damage costs. We've now invoiced the 5 prime contractors that were working under TACUS during this period and set a deadline of next week to receive those funds. So we'll see how that goes. In your packet, there is a monthly report from HARC. There's also comments that HARC prepared to the Lone Star Groundwater District regarding their phase 2 subsidence study. And also this week, we anticipate releasing HARC's final recommendation report on where to place subsidence monitoring devices throughout Montgomery County, and also launch the story book that was prepared for the Groundwater Research Consortium. We're still in the process of evaluating if the 2 AMI poles, one in Slash Pine neighborhood, the other up by Lake Woodlands and Kirkendall, can be relocated and what those costs and logistics would be. I also reported that the San Jacinto River Authority staff and our staff are putting together a short list of consultants and lobbyists to put us in the best position to obtain some funding from the Biden infrastructure plan if and when that is approved. And we're also working on setting up a meeting with Congressman Brady and his office to get some guidance and feedback from them on that topic. And that concludes my report today.
Okay, Neil Gaynor again. Any questions for Jim on his report? I've got a question, Jim. Under the sanitary sewer evaluation manhole inspection, it's reported you're about 60% complete, and the project will be wrapping up by September. Will we be receiving some kind of report out of that evaluation of the condition of the sewer lines and manholes?
Yes, a very detailed report. Mike, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's one of the deliverables, is a final assessment report with recommendations for repairs, improvements, and so forth.
Okay, thank you both, Jim and Mike.
Yeah, and what we'll do, Neil, we'll get that, the recommendations to prepare next year's budget to budget for any of the repairs in your district and elsewhere.
Yeah, that was going to be the follow-up question, because that could have a significant impact on budgets and allocation of funds. So very good, thank you. Are there any other questions from directors to Jim or Mike? Okay. Hearing none, we will go on to agenda item 16, receive the Woodlands Water Trustees report. Over to you, Ron.
Thank you, Neil. In looking at the summary of the trustees meeting last week, I think Jim or San Jacinto River Authority have covered every item. I would like Jim to elaborate, if he will, on the proclamation, the Woodlands Water Agency staff employee recognition and bonus that was agreed upon with the trustees last week, coming out of a recommendation with the personnel committee and trustee Paul Martin's recommendation. Jim, has that proclamation gone formal with the employees, and the recognition of the employees have been announced?
Yes, the proclamation was executed and delivered to the employees today with the notice of the bonus on their paycheck for the performance during COVID, during the winter storm, and other challenges during the last few months. Yes, and appreciated very much.
Thank you. And that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ron, for your report. Okay, moving on now. Discuss future agenda / announcements. Item 17, discuss any matters for placement on future agenda. And by that, we mean the July agenda for any items that are coming up. Just to make absolutely clear, we will specify the meeting in which a future item will be on the agenda, be it July or whenever, August, whatever. So I want to make sure that that is included in the minutes for the meeting of this meeting. The consolidation will be voting on those matters pertaining to consolidation. And I believe that all the paperwork necessary to vote will be ready by, or before, I should say, the next meeting. And we will also vote on in-person meetings. That should be on the July agenda as well. Are there any matters that directors wish to have placed on the next month's agenda in July, or on a further, a future agenda beyond July? Okay. All right. Hearing, are there any other matters that any director wishes to discuss? Okay, as it is now 2:25, I call the meeting of the Board of Directors of MUD 6 adjourned. And thank you all. I really appreciate the discussion today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Good job.
Um,
Bye, everyone.